They say time heals all wounds, but when I moved into that sleepy cul-de-sac, I was hoping time would just leave me the hell alone. The last thing I wanted was more thinking, more remembering. I needed quiet, a fresh start, nothing complicated. And then, I saw her. She was bent over a rose bush, pruning it with the kind of focus people usually reserve for surgery. Her silver hair was pulled into a loose braid, and the sun caught the shimmer of it like it had been woven with thread from the moon itself. She wore a deep green sundress that skimmed her figure with a confidence most women half her age didn't dare attempt. I froze halfway up my porch steps, groceries in hand, staring like an idiot. She must have felt it, because she turned, slow and graceful, and met my eyes. I expected irritation, maybe even judgment. Instead, she smiled. Not a polite smile, not neighborly. It was sly, knowing. A secret smile. "New here?" she called across the lawn, voice smooth like whiskey on a cold night. "Yeah," I managed. "Just moved in today." She straightened and walked toward the fence that separated our yards. Up close, she was even more striking. Lines around her eyes, yes, but they only made her more interesting, more real. Her eyes were the color of wet moss, sharp and playful. "I'm Eleanor," she said, extending a hand over the fence. "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Jake," I replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin warm. My pulse did something weird, and I dropped her hand too fast. We made small talk. How long she'd lived there, what I did for a living, and how I was settling in. Her voice made everything sound elegant. I was aware of her in a way I hadn't been aware of anyone in a long time. A car pulled up to the curb, and an older man got out. A neighbor, I assumed. He smiled and waved. "Hard to believe she's almost 70, huh?" he said to me with a chuckle before heading inside. I turned back to Eleanor, stunned. She just raised one eyebrow and winked. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that smile, that wink, that voice. It made no sense. I wasn't into older women. Not really. It was just curiosity, a one-off moment, a fluke. But around midnight, I found myself at the window, lights off, watching the warm glow from Eleanor's kitchen. Her silhouette moved with easy grace as she poured herself a glass of wine. She paused for a second, turned slightly. Did she know I was watching? My throat was dry. I told myself to stop, to walk away. But I didn't, and I wasn't sure why. I told myself I'd keep my distance. 5 days later, I was standing on her porch with a bottle of scotch and a nervous smile like some clueless kid on a date. It wasn't supposed to be anything, just a friendly visit. She'd mentioned she loved jazz and old books. I'd said I had a first edition Hemingway that needed a new home. She told me to come by. Simple, right? So why were my palms sweating? Eleanor opened the door in a soft cream sweater and jeans that fit her curves like they were tailored for her. She looked casual, effortless, dangerous. "Well," she said, smiling at the bottle in my hand, "either you're here to impress me or get me drunk. Can't it be both?" She laughed, stepping aside. "Come in, Jake." Her house smelled like something floral and warm, maybe vanilla or cinnamon. A jazz record played in the background, Billie Holiday, I think. The place looked like her, classy without trying too hard. Books everywhere, old photographs in black and white, art with real brushstrokes. We settled into the living room and she poured 2 fingers of scotch for each of us. "Tea would have been fine," she teased, handing me a glass. "I figured you might appreciate something stronger." I always appreciate bold choices. We clinked glasses. I sipped. The burn felt good. Conversation flowed easier than I expected. We talked about music, her favorite writers, her late husband, briefly, carefully. She didn't dwell. I told her about my last relationship, how it fell apart when I couldn't fake being okay anymore. Most people would have winced or changed the subject. not Eleanor. "I think most people are just pretending not to fall apart," she said, refilling our glasses. "You're just honest about it." It wasn't the words, it was the way she looked at me when she said them. Like she saw me. Like she already knew. Time got weird after that. The scotch hit my veins, Billy crooned in the background, and the edges between us got blurred. At some point, her fingers brushed mine. Nothing dramatic, just a passing touch, like an accident. But it lingered. We both felt it. Her eyes flicked to mine and something electric passed between us. I couldn't move. Didn't want to. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said, though my heart was beating like a war drum. "I just don't know what this is." She tilted her head, studying me. "You don't need to name it. Just feel it." She stood, walked over to the record player and flipped the vinyl. Billy started again, low and smoky. Eleanor stayed by the turntable, her back to me, giving me space. Or maybe giving me a choice. I should have left. I really should have. But instead, I sat there, glad. They say every man has a line he won't cross. But standing in Eleanor's living room that night, with her watching me like she already knew I would, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know where my line was anymore. The room was quiet except for the faint crackle of the vinyl spinning on the turntable. Eleanor was still standing there, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the record player, the other holding her glass. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But the air between us buzzed like static before a storm. I stood, slowly, unsure of what I was even doing. Maybe I thought walking toward her would clear my head. Maybe I knew exactly what I was doing. Her eyes met mine, calm, steady, but searching. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "That's the thing," I said, my voice rough, too honest. "I don't think I want to stop." She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Jake." I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Her fingers threaded through mine like they'd done it 1,000 times before. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it echoed in my ears. We kissed. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, intentional. Like we both knew this moment would change everything. Her lips were soft. Her touch gentle but sure. And the way she leaned into me. God, it was like the rest of the world didn't exist. When I pulled back, her eyes were closed. She rested her forehead against mine. Then, just as suddenly, she stepped away. I blinked, breathless. "What's wrong?" Eleanor walked to the window and looked out into the night. "I've done this before," she said softly. "Not like this. Not with someone like you. But I know what comes next. People talk. They judge. And when the high wears off, when the novelty fades..." I shook my head. "That's not what this is." "But you don't know that. Not yet." She turned, her face unreadable. "You're still figuring out who you are, what you want. I've had decades to do that. This thing between us, it's not fair to you." I crossed the room to her. "What if it's not about being fair? What if I just want you?" For the first time I saw her hesitate, not with flirtation or mystery, but with real vulnerability. She stepped close again, reached up, and brushed my cheek with the back of her fingers. "Then you need to think about what that really means. Because once we cross that line, there's no going back," I whispered. She nodded. "Exactly." And then she walked away, deeper into the house, leaving me standing there in the silence, heart pounding, every nerve lit up like a live wire. I stood there for a long time, and I realized something. I'd already crossed the line. I used to think love had rules, that it needed to look a certain way, fit a timeline, check all the boxes. But nothing about Eleanor ever fit into a box. That night, after she walked away, I didn't chase her. I stayed in her living room for a few more minutes, heart thudding in my ears, listening to the soft crackle of the record spinning into silence. Then I left. I needed air. I needed time. I spent the next 2 days doing what I'd always done, overthinking everything. The age gap, the gossip, the stares we'd get. But nothing scared me more than the idea of pretending what I felt for her wasn't real. On the third day, I showed up at her door. She opened it without a word. Her eyes met mine, calm, tired, hopeful. "I've thought about it," I said. "All of it. The risks, the judgments, the what-ifs." "And?" she asked softly. "I don't care." Her breath caught, just slightly. I took a step closer. "I've felt more alive around you in the last 2 weeks than I have in the last 2 years. You make me want to be someone better, someone braver, and I don't want to waste another second wondering if that's wrong." Eleanor didn't speak right away. She just looked at me. Really looked. And something inside her softened. Then, without a word, she pulled me into her arms, and I let everything else fall away. That was 6 months ago. We don't pretend it's easy. People talk. Some of the neighbors have stopped waving. My parents asked if I was going through something. But the truth is, I've never been more clear. Eleanor is everything I never knew I needed. Warm, wise, sexy in a way that has nothing to do with age, and everything to do with how she owns every room she enters. And she challenges me, not just to love her, but to love myself enough to choose what makes me happy. I write again now. Actually write. Eleanor reads my pages with a red pen and a wicked smile, teasing me about my sentence structure and kissing me when I get it right. Sometimes we dance in the kitchen to old records. Sometimes we argue about politics. Sometimes we lie in bed for hours, not saying anything, just holding each other like we know time is both infinite and limited. She's old enough to be my grandma. That fact never changed. But neither did this. She saw me when I felt invisible. She touched parts of me that had been asleep for years. She didn't just walk into my life. She opened a door I didn't even know was locked. There's no going back now, and I wouldn't want to. Thanks for watching.